So, you want to own an oil supertanker. You spend $120 million building one, load it up with 2 million barrels of crude, and then send it across the ocean to make your fortune. Here's the part nobody tells you up front. Whether that ship makes you rich or slowly bleeds you dry comes down almost entirely to one number you have almost no control over. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why that number swings so wildly, who's quietly buying up the entire fleet right now, and the part of this industry that almost nobody outside the shipping world knows exists. A fleet of nearly 1,100 ghost ships moving oil the world has banned, sailing under flags of countries that don't even exist anymore. Let's start with the machine itself, because the scale of it is genuinely hard to wrap your head around. A modern VLCC, that stands for Very Large Crude Carrier, is about 330 meters long. That's roughly 3 football fields of steel, end to end. A single one of these ships can haul over 4 million barrels of crude oil in one go, enough to meet the daily demand of a country like France or Germany. A standard VLCC carries around 2 million barrels. The engine driving it has pistons with an 80-centimeter bore and a stroke of more than 3 meters. Each individual piston is basically the size of a small car. This is not a vehicle, it's a floating industrial facility. Building one costs around $120 million. Mercuria signed a deal earlier this year to purchase 4 new VLCCs from a Chinese shipyard in a contract worth up to $500 million. Saudi owner Bahri went even further, spending $1 billion to purchase 9 VLCCs in a single deal. So the capital involved here is enormous. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is the thing that makes tanker economics so different from almost any other business. The moment that ship rolls off the dock and starts trading, its profitability is almost entirely determined by a single daily number, the charter rate. That's what someone pays you to use your ship for a day. And that number moves like a heart monitor after a sprint. Daily charter rates for VLCCs on the Middle East to Asia reached their highest level since the COVID pandemic earlier this year. The VLCC DHT Jaguar was signed up for a rate of $208,000 per day by Saudi shipper Bahri. $208,000 per day for one ship. That same ship, just a few months later, was locked into a 3-year time charter at $75,000 per day, commencing September 2026 with a global energy company. Still a great number, but less than half of what it earned at the peak. And when the market is soft, when there's too much supply and not enough cargo, rates can collapse toward $20,000 a day or lower, which for a ship with $120 million in debt behind it is basically a slow bleed. In the first quarter of 2026, DHT Holdings booked 76% of available VLCC spot days at $78,900 per day. That's a good quarter, but the spread between a good quarter and a bad one can be the difference between paying down your debt and falling behind it. The timing of when your ship enters the market matters enormously. Buy at the wrong point in the cycle, commission a new build that delivers into a soft market, and the math turns against you fast. It's the same timing gamble as any other massive capital investment in commodities. You're not just buying a ship, you're placing a bet on where the world will be in 3 years. And now here's where the private money gets interesting, because there's a consolidation happening right now that most people have no idea about. According to DHT, private aggregators could soon control at least 25% of the compliant tramping VLCC fleet, a level of concentration that could influence availability and pricing power. The remaining compliant fleet is more tightly controlled than ever. Aggressive acquisition campaigns by major players like South Korean firm Sinokor have consolidated ownership, and with fewer ships available and fewer owners to talk to, the power balance has shifted decisively in favor of ship owners. So, if you're a charterer, an oil company that needs to move crude, you're increasingly negotiating with a smaller group of people who own a larger share of the ships you need. That drives rates up, and it's happening quietly, outside the headlines. Now, there's something else driving the tightness in this market, something bigger. And this is the part I promised you at the start, the part that sounds like it's from a spy novel, but is completely, verifiably real. Analysts at Windward AI describe approximately 1,900 vessels as operating as part of the dark fleet or shadow fleet, tankers operating outside the norms of regulated international shipping, specifically to move sanctioned commodities: Russian crude, Iranian crude, Venezuelan crude, oil that Western sanctions say shouldn't be moving at all. In the immediate aftermath of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the shadow fleet was approximately 600 vessels. By early 2026, it had tripled in size. Think about what that means structurally. A significant portion of tonnage, estimated at over 15%, has migrated into the shadow fleet to service sanctioned trades, effectively removing those vessels from the mainstream compliant market used by major international oil companies, drastically reducing the pool of available ships. So the shadow fleet isn't just a geopolitical story. It's directly connected to why the ships you can legally charter are so expensive. Every tanker that goes dark is one fewer ship in the legitimate market. And how do these ships stay hidden? Ownership is buried in shell companies across multiple countries. Ships regularly switch off their AIS transponders, going completely dark so no one can track where they are or which ports they visit. Cargo changes hands at sea through ship-to-ship transfers, keeping sanctioned oil away from restricted ports. False paperwork and obscure flag registries handle the rest. Here's a specific example that makes this concrete. One of the clearest cases is the U.S. seizure of the VLCC Skipper off Venezuela. At the time of boarding, Skipper's AIS placed the vessel more than 500 nautical miles away, off the coast of Guyana. Remote sensing intelligence confirmed the tanker was nowhere near its declared position. Skipper was also falsely flying the flag of Guyana, a registry that has not existed since 2021, rendering the vessel effectively stateless. Sanctioned since 2022 for supporting Iran and Hezbollah-linked oil smuggling, Skipper combined AIS spoofing, false flags, and legal ambiguity to sustain sanctioned trade until enforcement intervened. A ghost ship with a fake name, a fake location, and a flag from a country whose maritime registry no longer exists. It was, for all practical purposes, invisible. And if one of these ships has an accident, roughly 60% of shadow fleet ships lack insurance coverage, and without it, cleanup costs, estimated between $859 million and $1.6 billion, are passed to European taxpayers or coastal states. In January 2026, a Russian flag tanker called the Aventin, carrying approximately 99,000 tons of crude oil, suffered an engine failure in the Baltic Sea and drifted without propulsion for several days. Danish and Polish naval assets shadowed the vessel in deteriorating weather, concerned about a potential grounding or oil spill near protected coastline. Nobody's paying for that cleanup. There's no one to call. The owner is a shell company in a jurisdiction that doesn't cooperate with Western courts. The insurance is fake or Russian-linked, and the ship is technically stateless. If you're watching this and thinking about the insurance angle specifically, and how a whole industry can operate with that kind of liability gap, that's exactly the kind of structural loophole we've looked at in other videos on this channel. Drop a comment if you want to see that one next, because the way maritime insurance actually works is its own rabbit hole. Now, here's the counterintuitive thing that gives this whole story an extra layer. You might assume that with a shadow fleet of nearly 1,900 tankers sailing around with fake transponders and no real insurance, the oceans would be leaking oil constantly. And the answer, weirdly, is the opposite. Despite the shadow fleet, oil spills at sea have fallen to a fraction of what they were in the 1970s and 1990s, even as the total volume of oil being transported has gone up significantly. The reason is one disaster from 1989, when the Exxon Valdez ran aground in Alaska and spilled nearly 11 million gallons of crude oil into Prince William Sound. It killed hundreds of thousands of seabirds and triggered one of the most significant pieces of environmental legislation in American history. The Oil Pollution Act that followed effectively banned single-hull tankers from U.S. waters. Now virtually every tanker on the legitimate market has a double steel hull, 2 layers of steel between the cargo and the ocean. And here's the scale context. A modern VLCC carries roughly 8 times more oil than the Exxon Valdez spilled. The fact that spills are down despite the volume going up is almost entirely because of better ship design. The shadow fleet is the exception. Those older, single-hull vessels are the ones keeping maritime authorities up at night. So where does a tanker end up when it's done? And this is the last piece, the one that ties everything together. Every ship eventually dies on a beach. The Seawise Giant, the largest self-propelled ship ever built, measured 458 meters in length with a laden draft of 24.6 meters, making her incapable of navigating the English Channel, the Suez Canal, or the Panama Canal. She could carry nearly 4.1 million barrels of oil in a single voyage. She was hit by Iraqi missiles in 1988 during the Iran-Iraq War, salvaged, repaired, renamed, and kept trading for decades more. In December 2009, the decision was made to end her service. She was renamed Mont and towed to Alang, India, one of the world's largest shipbreaking yards. There, in 2010, the story of the largest vessel ever built came to an end. The ship's 36-ton anchor was saved and donated to the Hong Kong Maritime Museum. That's it, the whole ship gone. Just the anchor left, and that's how every tanker goes. When the economics no longer work, when the hull is too old and the maintenance too expensive, the ship gets renamed one final time, reflagged to a country that asks no questions, and driven onto a beach at full speed so workers can cut it apart with torches and sell the steel by the ton. The flag it sailed under for 20 years disappears. The shell company that owned it dissolves. The next cargo of scrap steel gets loaded onto another ship, and the whole thing starts again. So here's what you actually learned today. A VLCC costs $120 million to build and can earn over $200,000 a day at the peak of the market, or barely enough to cover costs when it's soft. A small group of private buyers is quietly consolidating ownership of the legitimate fleet, which is one of the main reasons rates are so high right now. Nearly 1,800 ships are moving sanctioned oil right now with their transponders off, their flags fake, and their insurance non-existent. And that shadow fleet is one of the reasons the compliant market is so tight. And every one of these ships, no matter how much money it made, ends up on a beach in India being cut apart for scrap. A supertanker is not really a ship. It's a floating oil price bet, registered under a flag of convenience, and half the fleet is now sailing invisibly. That's the actual business. If this kind of deep dive into how industries actually work is what you're here for, subscribe. We do this regularly across energy, infrastructure, and finance. And if you want to see how the economics of a completely different kind of massive, politically complicated energy project work, the video on nuclear power plants is right there. Same structure, different kind of bet. Watch that one next.